Are you ready for the Sims movie blockbuster of the year? Okay, get out of here. This video is brought to you through the EA Creator Network. I was given early access to the brand new expansion pack, The Sims 4 Growing Together. This isn't my review, this is basically just my gameplay overview, telling you what comes with the pack, how to do certain things, how to get the most out of this pack if you are getting your hands on it, if you want to know what's included. Let's go. I'm gonna start off with the big systems that come into play during Growing Together. So starting off, family dynamics. Whilst you are creating a family within Create a Sim, you can actually choose these. They're in the menu where you choose like how your sim is related to each other, and there are 7 to choose from, or you can actually just hop into the game without setting any of them in Create a Sim, and then as you go through gameplay, you will get a pop-up that says like, hey, this is how this sim is currently feeling. Do you agree with this relationship? Yes or no? If you say no, that means you can just opt out of it. That family dynamic won't be attached to that relationship or those sims, or you can choose to accept it and therefore it will be applied. You'll be able to see it through your relationship panel. You have difficult, strict, permissive, supportive, close, distant, and jokesters. I'll give you a quick run through on like some of these, but jokesters, obviously, they are very playful. They tend to be like mischievous towards one another. Each of these can also bring certain sentiments. Difficult obviously means that it's a little bit turbulent. These sims like to argue or criticize one another. Distant will like barely ever get in touch with each other. They'll try and avoid each other if they are in the same household, in the same house, or on the same community lot. Permissive is basically when a younger sim has an older sim wrapped around their little finger, they get away scot-free. Then on the opposite, you have strict. They can't get away with anything. And how do these come about? They're basically based on how your sims interact with each other and also how you've sort of just been like playing the game. And then they also affect how your sims will then continue to interact with each other. So I actually noticed that the oldest child in the family that I was playing actually had the difficult dynamic with her sibling and also both of her parents. It was a lot, and I feel like even though the both of them were kind of being mean to each other, one of the parents who was actually loyal kept on going at the older one instead of the younger one, and I think that was because they had a difficult dynamic, whereas her and the younger sim actually didn't. And it was kind of nice to see that actually like represented within gameplay. And whilst these are called dynamic, I did notice I played about 2 weeks, I think, in total when it came to this family, and they didn't really shift at all. Even though 2 of my sims started out with that difficult dynamic, they actually, by the end of it, their relationship was on like good terms. She went the complete opposite way with another parent. She was in the red by the end of it, which was again nice to see how that was sort of affecting their relationship. But with the good one, their dynamic didn't change at all. It didn't shift. I didn't get an option to be like, hey, they've kind of gone through this period of having this relationship, but now they're on good terms. Would you like to turn this into like a supportive or a close dynamic? I don't even know if that is a possibility. I would like it to be a possibility, but I'm gonna say I don't think it is. But feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. If this pack comes out on Friday and you get your hands on it and you do get a shift in your family dynamic, anything that I say in this video that I'm not 100% on and then I do happen to get a follow-up for it, check out the pinned comment. One thing I would like to point out is these dynamics can actually start having an effect from as young as being a toddler. I had my kid sim start to be mean towards the toddler after he kicked her. I mean, she was gonna go down the nice close maybe, and then he kicked her and she was like, I'm gonna get my revenge, and they got the difficult dynamic, but then she still chose to tell him that he was her favorite and he hugged her and everything. The whole animation played out, but they both still got a negative impact on their relationship from that because they had a difficult dynamic, and he was like, no, we don't have anything in common. Why are you my sibling? I don't want you even being nice to me. Toddlers who know what they like, they're getting smart. Then of course we have social compatibility. This is actually shown in the relationship panel of a sim, and it's shown by a little jigsaw piece in the top right corner of a sim's icon in your relationship panel. There are actually 4 different ones. You can have amazing compatibility, good, bad, and awful. Again, this kind of impacts your interactions with other Sims and also your relationships. For example, if you have absolutely awful compatibility, your Sims are going to be getting a lot of negative interactions towards each other, and it will also start to affect their relationship. If you want to try and become friends with someone you have an awful compatibility with, it's going to take you a lot longer because of all those negative interactions, and it's most likely you're probably going to end up in the negative friendship zone. Whereas if you are interacting with someone who has amazing compatibility with you, you're going to see your relationship fly. And this social compatibility is actually drawn from the new likes and dislikes. You can obviously choose those within Create a Sim, or you can actually come across them once again in gameplay. I had my child Sim interact with their parent, and because the parent was like quite cheerful and chirpy, I actually got a pop-up that said like, hey, Haley has interacted with this Sim. They actually are quite optimistic. Should Haley like optimistic Sims? And because I wanted to cause a little bit of drama, and this was right at the beginning, I was like, nope, I don't want her to like those. It works like any other likes and dislikes, but keep in mind they are going to have an effect on your relationships, which is something I really like about this pack. It feels as if things actually have an effect, and you can see those effects working. Like, I had the siblings do a lot of mean interactions to one another, especially when the younger one was a toddler, which I felt really awful about, but hey, what can I say? He kicked me first. But I don't think that toddlers can actually have like conversation topics or Sim characteristics, likes and dislikes within Create a Sim. So therefore he kind of had to hold that in until he was a child, until he could have those likes and dislikes. And then he decided that he really disliked mean interactions. I mean, I'm not surprised. He basically got bullied his entire toddlerhood. My suggestion would be put as many of these Sim characteristic and conversational topic likes and dislikes on as many Sims as possible, and as many as you possibly can if you obviously want to experience this and you want it to have an effect on your relationships, because I think there's some really interesting gameplay like tied behind them. It doesn't really introduce like anything new, but it's nice to not feel like The Sims 4 is too easy to play and not everything is golden. Oh my word, it feels like The Sims 2 memory system is back. Yes, I know it was base game. Yes, I've seen everyone talking about this, but milestones pretty much are very, very similar to The Sims 2. When I first loaded into this, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of disappointed because all the pre-mades that I really saw, even my own family at the get-go, kind of just had like first woohoo, but it didn't say who it with. When it said retired from a job, it didn't say what job people had, you know? Like, I wanted milestones to actually be accurate so that I personally could remember everything that my Sim had gone through in their life. It is basically a memory system. However, you can't like reminisce about certain milestones or anything like that. They're also not dated, which I think is something that I would have liked to see, but I know that's pretty difficult because like Sims doesn't even really have like an official date. These milestones are made through gameplay. You can basically just play the game and then you'll get a little red sparkle on your Sim, and then you also get a notification to say new milestone reached. Check out the Sim panel to find out more about this, and that's where you can view all of your milestones. I will say, I don't think one of the filters was working. All of mine were sorted by category, and I don't think that they were sorted by date. When you reach certain milestones within your Sim's life, for example, getting married or having a baby, those come with some physical reminders of those memories that you can put up on your wall. You can actually have a marriage certificate. You can also have baby prints. You can also retrofit the marriage certificate. You can actually go on your phone and you can request a marriage certificate for 50 simoleons. And as you play with them, they get more and more accurate. So for example, my Sim had their first pass out from exhaustion and it was geotagged as their house because that's where it happened. So I'm assuming if you wanted to have your wedding from hell and get married in Tartosa using my wedding stories, that would be tagged as Tartosa. My only issue with this is I genuinely thought that these milestones were going to be base game, and that's not like a this belongs in base game because The Sims 2 had it in base game. My reasoning for this is more a worry that these milestones are gonna get forgotten about. We are so used to having really nice systems introduced in packs, but then them just never ever getting updated. Like for example, lifestyles that came with Snowy Escape, they were introduced with Snowy Escape, they are only available within that pack, and I doubt we're ever gonna get any in the future. I really hope hope that that isn't the case for milestones. Because obviously they've retrofitted these milestones to work with base game. So for example, when you do have a baby, it works as a milestone. I'm hoping that that continues for the future of these packs. I genuinely think it being tied to growing together is gonna force people's hands, I guess. I don't really want to say that, but I think it's a big draw of this expansion pack. And if they were to ever bring it into the base game down the line, I feel like people would be annoyed, and they would be annoyed rightfully so. That's my biggest concern when it comes to milestones. However, I really, really like them. I will say the biggest impact is definitely for infants. Yes, every age range can get them, which I think is wonderful. If you start playing from being a child, any milestones made from like a child to being an elder, if you live that long, you will be able to see all of them. You'll be able to see who you did those things with, where you did those things. Tummy time is exclusive to this expansion pack, and that's going to lead into so many milestones. I would say as soon as you have an infant, if you have growing together, get working on tummy time, because it genuinely unlocks a lot of the other potential gameplay. So tummy time leads to a rolling milestone, which then links back to creeping. Creeping is when they start kind of lifting their head up and getting up on all fours, but then slightly falling over. Then creeping, they can learn crawling. That's when they can start to move about, which then can also lead to them pulling themselves up either in their crib or on a sofa, on a chair. They can kind of stand up and start to use their legs. Tummy time also leads to them like starting to be able to sit up, and then you can practice sitting up, which then unlocks the high chair for infants, which means that they can start having food in the high chair. The toys playmat leads to gripping, and then once you have gripping down, if you put them in the high chair, they can actually start reaching for their food and having finger food. The bum shuffling is part of like learning to sit up, and that's another way of getting around. So if you don't want them to crawl, just stop tummy time and then they can just scoot around on their bottom. Speaking of infants, we know that both infants and toddlers can have their own personality quirks. Once again, these are just discovered throughout gameplay. You can have up to 3 on both infants and toddlers. They are not the same as one another. Some of them actually didn't carry over, but it was nice to see that when my infant was an infant, they were a messy eater, and they got that through being in their high chair. And then when they actually aged up into a toddler, it got rid of the infant quirks, but then suddenly a few days later, my toddler actually then became a messy eater once again. So whilst that was like completely random, it was nice that it kind of had that essence of someone developing and still being the same character, but just being a little bit older. I'm fairly sure these are random, but I think they're also based on like how your older Sims interact with your younger ones. Because someone in the welcome wagon, for example, started reading to my toddler, and then my toddler decided to get the Loves Book quirk, which I thought was really, really cute. And then he really wanted to like play in the bookshelf, and he wanted to learn how to read by himself. And I do think it kind of adds a little bit more personality to your toddlers. Obviously, they're restricted to one personality trait, so it felt like these quirks were just giving them kind of another unlocked trait. I also experienced Loves Being Held for infants. I had the free Tinkler, although I didn't actually see any pee spray anywhere. Hates bedtime and also hates waking up. The hates bedtime one, you can get that for both toddlers and infants. For infants, it was actually kind of OP because you can cancel out of them crying and just like have them try to get back off to sleep themselves, which I really liked. However, on the toddler, it was actually super annoying because every time they managed to drift off to sleep, they just woke themselves up. I think he was either a light sleeper or he just hated bedtime. And I did see a couple of repeats. Not 100% if there's like a cheat to maybe choose your own quirks. I can imagine that being a thing. So I don't know if these will eventually start to get repetitive, but for right now, it adds that personality, and that's something that I really, really like. It also can affect your moodlet. So if a sim hates waking up early, and then whenever they wake up, they're in like a sad mood for the next 2 hours. Oh, these obviously bring new like animations that you don't really have control over because they are just quirks and they happen at any time. If you have a sneezer, my infant literally sneezed so much, I'm headcanoning that they had hay fever. And when they're a messy eater, they actually can just like throw their plates or like hit their plates off the high chair. The high chair can get messy. You can also then kind of scrub them off in the sink. They don't actually like wash them in the sink. They just kind of like twist them and then bubbles float. And again, add that quirkiness and add that personality. I guess that's why they are called quirks. Oh, and they also throw food piles on the floor, so that's really, really fun. We obviously know that midlife crisis is making its return in this pack. I'm fairly sure you actually have to be an adult for this to happen. I started playing with both of my Sims being young adults, and I didn't even see the option. Like, no one even started to have an early crisis, aged them up into adults, and a couple of days later, one of my Sims started to go through an early midlife crisis. That's basically a moodlet that then times down to actually going into a full-blown midlife crisis. They can just disappear. For example, I had my Sim go to work. I had her slack off, I'm fairly sure, and then she came back and was like, no, you know what? I'm out of that. So I would say, like, maybe just try and keep them at home and do nothing exciting with your Sims if you want them to experience a midlife crisis. I think there's something like a 2% chance of it happening, like, every day as an adult Sim wakes up. You then move into a full-blown midlife crisis. You get a notification. It's a big purple one, you know, the big scary ones that they have in The Sims 4. And it's like, your Sim is bored with their life. I think there's multiple midlife crises that you can actually do. I got a creative one, and it comes up within your aspiration panel. There are actually optional tasks that you can have your Sims do. There's also a moodlet telling you how long the midlife crisis will last for. I'm fairly sure it's around 6 days, 16 hours, maybe 7 days. However, doing some of the optional tasks that are listed in your aspiration panel actually means that you can decrease the time of having a midlife crisis. I don't know how it works if you don't do any of those tasks, if you don't like overcome a midlife crisis. My Sim didn't really like overcome it. She did like a fair few of the tasks, and I wanted her to because she had no interest in like painting or gardening before this midlife crisis, and then she decided that she suddenly took up gardening as a hobby and started to enjoy it, and she got into the painting skill, and also she wrote a book, which I just think is such a cool opportunity. I love spanner in the works. I love when the game can actually dictate like what my Sim is gonna do next, and I don't constantly have to come up with those stories myself. I'm excited to see what happens if you don't do any of the tasks, if anything, because like I said, I did some of mine, and then she kind of just got a moodlet that she was happy again, and she was like, yeah, you know what, that wasn't so bad, like, I'm feeling okay. I picked up a couple of new skills here or there. However, she didn't make friends with the tragic clown, which I thought was impeccable. Unfortunately, none of my Sims got to experience a workplace rival. There are actually some traits. She was gregarious, so it was likely that it wasn't going to happen, whereas I'm fairly sure if you probably go to work in a bad mood constantly and you have like pretty negative traits like mean, you have more of a chance of getting a work rival. And then she also didn't get fired, even though she was going through some pretty dark times, which, by the way, I don't know if this was exactly to do with midlife crises or if it was just the fact that because she was having a midlife crisis and she befriended the tragic clown, she had the cheerful trait. So then it came up with this pop-up that was like, look, she's been feeling gloomy, she's been feeling sad for the last few days, she's not really feeling like her cheerful self. Would you like to switch the cheerful trait for the gloomy trait? And I thought that was so good. Again, you can just say no, you can opt out of this. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of pop-ups, and I don't feel like that's going to be everyone's thing. However, I think when it's doing fun things like that in the game, I can absolutely live with a pop-up. I think you can actually get additional traits or change your Sims traits like 3 times total. I think they can have up to 6 traits, maybe it's 5 though. And you can actually see their extra traits within their Sim panel where the traits are usually listed, and also in Create a Sim, that's what the 3 dots are under the 3 traits. If you just hover over those 3 dots, it will show you their additional traits that they have gathered through gameplay. Definitely feels dynamic, maybe feels more dynamic than family dynamics. The children's confidence is a system that I'm not particularly excited about, nor did I really pay much attention to it, nor did I even really work out how it worked. It felt like it was so easy to get them to a higher confidence level. Like, all you had to do was really like nice interactions with them, and they were like, okay, yeah, I feel good self-esteem. And whilst it does carry over to them being teenagers. So I'm sure if you do actually focus on this and like put in that time and effort, then you're gonna at least get a little bit out of this when they grow up to teens. Because if they have a high confidence when they age up into a teenager, that means that they have high self-esteem, which means they're confident more often and they're gonna perform better in like skills and also work. Whereas if they age up with a low confidence, that actually means that they will suffer a little bit as they go older in like job performance, and they'll really start to not feel great about themselves, which is nice, but it's literally just like far too easy to get high confidence and then so hard to get low confidence. I didn't see low confidence once. One sim was hovering around neutral confidence. I actually think that's because his sister was actually being mean to him like a lot of the time, even though his parents were nice to him. So I think that kind of evened it out. But when you're on neutral confidence, they're still figuring out how they feel about their capabilities. They can be easily encouraged or discouraged when gaining or losing confidence. A child's confidence level can increase to decrease depending on skill gain, school performance, positive and negative socialization, succeeding or failing skill-based activities, confident or embarrassed moods, and more. Caregivers criticizing or praising a child's behavior also impacts their confidence levels. I think that also adds to the struggle because I feel like most interactions in The Sims are nice, and then there wasn't that many criticized ones. Like, you could criticize a sim for not working on their mental skill. That was really about the only one that I saw. Sorry that they grew up in a supportive household. Stayovers. You can set these up on your mobile phone under the social tab. They can be anywhere from 1 to 6 days. You can actually invite anyone to stay over as long as your sim has a pretty good relationship with them. I tested it with a child sim and we could still invite them over, which I think is really nice if you are playing as a grandparent and you actually have kids that you want to sleep over at your house. I'm not sure how young that goes when it comes to life stages. I'm not sure if you can invite over infants. Probably not, because I feel like adult sims have to carry them. Whilst you're playing the game, you will get a notification from Kyle that pops up in the middle of your screen and it's like, yo bro, like, I hear you're amazing, I want to come over. And you're like, Kyle? No, not right now. I don't know who you are. You got the wrong person. Or you can invite him to stay over. I unfortunately cancelled out of it because I was like, no, Kyle, you are not going to steal this from me. You are not going to be my first stay over. I want my grandfather to be my first stay over. But unfortunately, Grandpa never ever got in touch with us unless it was to be like, hey, should I be friends with this person? And I was like, you make your own decision. You are a fully grown man. So I instead decided to reach out and asked him to stay. I don't know if they can invite themselves over or if they can just like turn up like Grandpa did in the trailer. I also don't think I had any family dynamic with Grandpa, so maybe if we were close, he would have maybe come around a little bit more often. When they actually turn up, they bring their little suitcase that works as a wardrobe. Everything to do with an event has a little star next to it in the interactions. Stayovers can also actually happen whilst other events are going on. So say if you're hosting a wedding, but then you want like your parents to stay over for a few more days, that is possible. You can actually ask them to relax, which means they won't actually help out around the house, more so if they want a little holiday, or you can just not click that and then they will help around the house. They will cook, they will help look after your kids. I did find that kids being able to ask people for things was super OP when it came to stayovers, because the toddler, for example, could ask Grandpa to read him a book. He could ask him to give him some food. And even though you don't have control over that sim whilst they are staying with you, I felt like when it comes to those younger sims being able to ask those things, it slightly still feels as if you can take care of their needs with an adult present whilst your other adults, like the parents, are just chilling. I think it's actually one of the best features of this pack. I think they thought about a lot of things when it came to stayovers, and it really shows. I'm fully just howling at the duality of this grandpa right here. The fact that it was absolute chaos. The kitchen sink was broken, the infant was on the floor, the toddler hadn't eaten, the kid wasn't in bed when the parents got back, and now look at them. Calm. He's got it all under control. There are 3 new events that come with this expansion. You have baby showers, you have slumber parties, and you have family reunions. I'm going to tell you up front, I did not experience a family reunion. I kind of wanted to save that for a video that I have planned. I did, however, throw a slumber party. I had my child sim host a slumber party. However, I think any sim over the age of being a child can throw a slumber party. You don't have to buy everyone a sleeping bag. They bring their own sleeping bags. And again, you sort of have those interactions to wrangle everyone together and actually getting them to do what you want them to do. So you can basically tell everyone to lay their sleeping bags down, you can tell everyone to go to sleep, which I genuinely think is so impressive because one, it actually worked, apart from a sim not being able to route to a sleeping bag, but that was my fault. You can, however, move the sleeping bags around once they have placed them because they're just live draggables, so don't feel like they have to sleep where they've put them down, because mine were all clustered into a pile. And it's also impressive because sleep actually happens, and I feel like when I was a kid throwing a slumber party, we definitely did not sleep, especially if we saw a spider in the middle of the night. You can also do pranks on other sims. You have to wait for them to actually be in their sleeping bag, and then you can pour water on them, you can put baby powder all over them, and you can also pop a balloon near them. There are snacks, however, there is only pizzas, or at least there was only pizzas. Keep in mind, I was playing with base game only and this pack. You can also tell stories, you can tell like fairy tales, you can tell ghost stories. It works like any normal event. You have in the top left corner a bunch of things that you need to do, interactions that need to happen, like dancing, playing games, telling stories. Also, if you get gold in this event, you get the froggy sleeping bag, which for all you gays out there, I know you're going to be wondering, how do you get the frog? Oh, and also children can have pillow fights on the sleeping bags. I don't actually know if they attach that to beds. I didn't test that. And then for a baby shower, yes, you can throw these for science babies. You don't actually have to be pregnant to be able to throw a baby shower, which is really, really nice. You can either throw these before you choose to have a science baby, because that is actually instant and it happens straight away. You just come home with a baby. Or you can choose to have it like afterwards. You can choose to have a baby shower whilst a sim is pregnant. And basically what happens at a baby shower, you can use the cannon, which is basically just like throws confetti and then everyone else throws confetti. It's kind of like a birthday cake. It's not like a gender reveal or anything like that. There isn't like specific colors. People can actually autonomously give you presents, which is quite nice. They do tend to be like little baby toys. And even if you are choosing both the parents as like hosts, they can actually give each other presents, which I think is a very, very cute idea. You can click on a sim and like buy a present from clicking on that sim and then autonomously give it to them. I don't think people can invite you to their own baby showers. I would love for that to happen. That's a complaint I have about The Sims 4 in general, the fact that no one really reaches out to you to invite you like to parties or anything. You can also talk about the future career of your baby. You can gush about the brand new arrival. Those are listed under small talk, which I thought was quite hilarious. Everyone was kind of interacting with each other, which sometimes I feel in The Sims 4 parties don't really go that well. That might again be affected by the fact that I was only playing with base game and this expansion pack. Also, I will say when it comes to sleepovers, you lot know that I have been dying for Sims just to be able to invite like the whole family roster of the relationships instead of just the specific Sims that they know. Kids still can't throw parties, which is so annoying, especially when it comes to sleepovers, because it's just like, come on. However, when you go through setting up this party with an adult Sim, you can choose to have your child as the host, and there's finally a full family roster. So almost everyone that your child sim knows, or just like your household know in general, are actually listed, which is flippin' delightful. I do think it was the case for baby showers, but that might just be because I actually had both the parents be the host, so it went off both of them. I definitely need to do more investigation on that, but I'm so happy. I just hope that they can do that for all the pre-existing parties. Also, not gonna lie, seeing these events be so good just made me really reflect on how terrible the rest of the events are in The Sims 4, and how I really think that everything needs an upgrade, especially like birthday parties. You could technically, I think, throw a baby shower without even thinking about having a child. If you just want to make some money off baby toys, go for it. Next to child confidence, I actually think this is one of the most disappointing parts of the pack for myself, and that is of course the recreation centers. When we do get a new lot type, you kind of expect like brand new gameplay to be tied to it. That is not the case here. I feel like I've been playing with these sorts of lots since the Sims 4 base game. They tweeted out that you could have art classes in this rec center. That's not a thing. There aren't any teachers of any kind on this lot, even though there is a gym. I don't think there was like a gym instructor at all. And that's disappointing to me because we have yoga classes and we obviously do have those gym instructors. I really, really would have loved it if they could have taken that framework and applied it to the room that has like all the art supplies, and they just have a person that goes around being like, hey, this is how you do this, and like mentoring your sim. That could have also been available example, for the music room, basically, I think they needed a new lot type to kind of program it, and there is specific programming. So each day, when Sims spawn on the recreation center, they'll actually drift into different rooms on like different days. For example, let's say on a Monday, everyone goes to the art room. So there'll be likely more people in the art room actually interacting with those art pieces. On a Tuesday, they might float over to the music room. There'll be a couple of people like playing the piano or playing the violin that's set up on the stage. It's a really nice lot, and it does have a lot of things to offer, and I do think people could get a lot of use out of it. It just doesn't feel any different, really. I understand that there's bigger systems in this pack, and that's probably what the work went into. I think the rec center just kind of promised more than it actually gives, and I think that's where my disappointment comes in. And then kind of the miscellaneous stuff. Obviously, we're getting tree houses. You just buy that from Build and Buy. There's only one option of trees. You have to have an adult sim start to work on it, but then children sims can help out. You can have multiple people working on it at the same time. Basically just uses the same animations as a rocket ship, which I honestly don't mind. How many times are you going to have an animation for a sim doing the same thing, like hitting things with a hammer and getting a tape measure out? So it does get up your handiness skill a little bit, and then once you've actually built it, it's pretty plain. However, you can choose to decorate it. You can have it as a little castaway island. You can have a space theme. I'm fairly sure you can have a pirate theme. I will say, over time, my treehouse started to get a little bit buggy. I was actually losing certain interactions on it, so not all of my sims could like choose to play on it. And then I also lost the option for the set design, so I couldn't really change how it looked after a while. You can upgrade it if your sim actually starts to learn the handiness skill. You can add a sliding pole, you can add a slide, you can add a bell. Your sims can actually go into the enclosure. They can read in the enclosure, relax, actually sleep there. It is a woohoo spot, and your sims can get splinters by woohooing in the treehouse. I think it's a pretty small percentage of it happening, but it is an uncomfortable moodlet. One of my favorite features of The Sims 3. They can play pretend. They can play pretend with other sims. I had my sim actually play pretend playing home, which I thought was so sweet because that was something that I used to do. Were you the mummy or the daddy when you played home? I was always the daddy, what can I say? And then it came up with like a little rainbow rug, and her and Atlas were like talking about babies and things. It's kind of the same imagination thing that kids can do on ponds and get famous. You'll see all these sort of like caricatures. They can climb up the slide, they can slide down the slide, they can slide down the pole, ring the bell. There is also an option of build and buy mode where if you type in like treehouse or like treehouse objects, you can place specific objects actually on the platform outside. Here you can put skill-based objects, for example, the many drawing tables that we have, which I am shocked to say we did not get a new drawing table this time around. Can we get a round of applause for the Sims team? Bluffy, the chemistry table, the little mini telescopes. You can also watch nature. They don't actually bring out the binoculars. It also, if you are a child, gets up your mental skill. You can set entry levels, so you can allow it to be just kids only, so adults aren't allowed, or teenagers. You can have it be teens only, so it can kind of be a cool little teen hangout. That's pretty much one of the only things that teen gets that's like specific to them, but I just thought I would point it out. Kids finally get bikes. I will say mine was very glitchy in early access. My sim was riding up onto the porch of their house. Her foot was dragging along the floor. It actually does take a little while. I think I had to have her like practice riding her bike about 3 times, which I feel isn't as long as like, you know, how long it takes in real life. They don't have stabilizers or anything like that. They sort of just scoot around, and then they can also like hit their head with their handlebars. Doesn't actually give them a scar or anything, but a cute little animation all the same. They can also have, I think, any sim teen or older teach them to ride a bike. I'll cheer a little bit, and if they actually learn to ride the bike whilst an adult sim is teaching them, they do have that interaction of them going like zooming off, riding down the path, and then they come back, and your older sim will actually like pick them up, spin them around, give them a big old hug. Unfortunately, that is just an animation. This was the exact moment that I realized my little girl looked like Chucky the doll. You can make friendship bracelets. These are actually done either on the drawing tables that children can use, or there is also a little like box of beads and strings bracelet making kit that I feel we all had as children at some point. It's not a Scooby, so you know, no UK culture showed off there. But once they've actually made a friendship friendship bracelet, it will go into their inventory, and then when they become like either friends or good friends, maybe even, they could click on a sim and choose to give them the friendship bracelet. They can also click on it whilst it's in their inventory and give a certain sim a friendship bracelet. They just like have to be on the lot and also have a good relationship. Unlocks a secret handshake where it's like fa la 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 la, and there's like a rainbow when they touch fists. Sims are absolutely feckin' stoked when you give them a friendship bracelet. It's like, yeah, our friendship is gonna get to the next level. No one's ever had that enthusiasm for being my friend, so can't relate. You can also demand them to give them back your friendship bracelet, which I just think is so funny. So if your kids actually do end up with like a difficult dynamic, or they fall out with a friend maybe, we have the games table. This is no different from any of the other games tables that we're used to seeing in The Sims 4. You will be able to play cards on it, which you can obviously already do. However, you will also, if you get your hands on Growing Together, be able to do puzzles on them, and you will also be able to play symbols. It definitely still looks like Mojang to me. I still don't know if it's like meant to be Dominoes or Mojang. I think it's just meant to be like the Sims version of all of those games. I didn't really interact with it. I thought puzzles were more interactive. So you can just set the game and then a puzzle or the symbols box will sit on top of the table until your sim actually like opts in to do a puzzle. They definitely opted to play symbols like way more frequently autonomously than I think they ever did puzzles. I don't think they started a puzzle autonomously, but you can choose how many pieces you want your puzzle to be. You can work on it together. I had it as like a little bonding session with my girlies. You can obviously steal pieces, and you can also like post it to Simstagram whilst you're working on it, which I think is also adorable. If you do steal a piece, you can either choose to return it and be a good sim, or you can choose to keep it, and then once your puzzle piece is actually complete, there's just like an actual piece missing. And my sim got really annoyed over the fact that there was a puzzle piece missing when really her wife just stole it, which I thought was quite funny. She didn't know that she had stolen it. You can also choose to frame these, so these can go up on your wall. They obviously did the flying unicorn. You can also do jigsaws from reference. I unfortunately did not test that out. I'm going to assume that it works the same way as painting a canvas from reference, which it basically just takes a photo from where your sim is, which is actually very unfortunate because, you know, not everyone can set up a games table at their wedding on the beach in Tartosa and have a sim take a picture from reference right when you are saying your vows, you know? Teeth perk! I am happy to announce that teeth don't play a super main role in this expansion. I didn't actually notice like my infants teething or toddlers teething at all. I don't think that is a thing. However, your child sims can actually lose their teeth. Again, every day when they wake up, there is a percentage that they're gonna have a wobbly tooth. They can either choose to wiggle it, they can choose to brush their teeth, which both encourage the tooth to fall out faster, which just happens randomly, but you'll get a little notification that says like your sim has lost their tooth, or you can just opt to yank it out and they dribble and drool, and it's kind of disgusting, but I also kind of love it because I've definitely done that whilst I was a kid. At night before you go to bed, make sure you click on your bed and you can place the tooth under the pillow and then go to sleep, and then when you wake up in the morning there'll be a little animation with like little coins above your head. There isn't actually like a fairy that appears. You do get some simoleons. I'm fairly sure I got like 67 simoleons. Rags to Riches Tooth Edition. Teething to Riches, let's go. The splash pad is obviously available in Gilbert's Garden. It basically just uses the animations that we have for showering or playing in the rain, and also playing with fountains. I don't know if infants can interact with the splash pad, but I know that toddlers definitely can. It's not a lot, it's just in an open neighborhoody type thing. I thought it was quite nice. I mean, I would have liked to see maybe a little water slide or something of that nature. It really did just kind of feel like fountains, but I do think it's a nice addition because if you ever search water parks on the gallery, there are so many fake splash pads in builds. I don't think I'm ever really gonna use these in like a back garden or anything, but I do think they're a nice addition. Also, I'm fairly sure in Gilbert Gardens, because that's where the rec center is, this is actually where you can go on your power walks. Unfortunately, power walking is tied to Sans sequoia, you actually have to click on one of the big like blue signs around the big lake near the rec center, and you can choose to send your Sims for a stroll around the lake, a walk around the lake, I think maybe a jog around the lake, but then also you can power walk. I had my Sims do this. One of them was actually wearing the baby carrier at the time with the infant in the back, which by the way, toddlers can't go in the baby carriers, infants can. And the infant actually fell asleep in the baby carrier, which was really, really cute. I didn't think the infants would be able to sleep in there. I guess if their need is like low enough. I mean, I think it works on their fitness skill. I don't really do it too often because once I found out that it was tied to the world, I was kind of over it. I'm sorry. Speaking of the baby carrier, a lot of people wanted me to test out different things with the baby carrier. I actually cooked with the baby carrier on and my Sim was able to cook. I don't know if they'll be able to work on like a laptop that's on a counter with a bar stool. I doubt it. I don't think they can sit down with the baby carrier on their back. My Sim actually couldn't paint with the baby carrier on her back. It looked like she kept trying to, but then she kept having to put the baby back in the crib. However, she could garden. Again, I don't know if that was just a glitch, but it does seem as if they can do certain things with a baby on their back, which is quite nice. However, I did have a fire and my Sim had to quickly like rush off to get that carrier and then just put the baby on the floor right near the fire. So maybe not the best thing to do. Definitely don't tag me on Twitter in those screenshots. And the baby carrier is a little bit weird because I personally thought it was going to be an object like the trolleys that we got in Generations. However, it's not. If you get this pack and you're like, where the heck are the infant carriers? Why can I not see them in build and buy mode? It's actually tied to an interaction. So when you click on an infant, you can then choose to put them in a baby carrier. I can't remember if you have to be holding the infant like in your arms and then click on them to put them in the baby carrier, or if you can just like straight up do it from the floor as well. They kind of just do the little jumping motion they do when they change clothes and boom, baby on back. Just reminds me of that Friends episode. I also just thought it was hilarious that my infant got a milestone for the firefighters who showed up. They were their first visitor. We truly did traumatize our child for life. Had my Sims go on a cute little date to the cinema. That's actually in the downtown area of Anchor Point Wharf. Not gonna lie, there's not a lot to do around that cinema. I loaded into the library, but I never really use libraries, especially now that we have the rec center. I don't really know why they chose to have a library and a rec center because it just feels like the rec center could have been both. I'm probably gonna take the library away and put like a restaurant so that when my Sims do go on date nights to the cinema, instead of just going to like the one food stand that's across the road near the waterfront, the cinema, you can see a number of different films. When I actually get my hands on this pack, I will absolutely check if the movie night stuff films are also included on that. And these actually have an effect on your moodlets. My Sims went to go watch a rom-com and one of them was feeling flirty afterwards, whereas her partner was feeling like uncomfortable or tense. She really didn't like it. She said that the actors were stiff. She said it was unbelievable, whereas her wife was like, oh my god, that was so cute. They had so much chemistry. So it was really nice to see like the difference. I'm assuming that each different genre of film will give you different moodlets. The cinema also looks really cute. I got this really cute shot of it at like sunset at night with like the sun going down, and then they have these interactive posters that play. If you get a chance, just like sit there and watch them go for like a few minutes. I think it's also available in live edit objects, so you can actually place this down on like any other lot in any other world. It's not just restricted. It also works like a rabbit hole, so your Sims just like go into it and like disappear. Baby changing tables. Again, another discussion where I know people are slightly annoyed that these didn't come in base game. I honestly don't mind either way. I don't mind them coming in the expansion. I don't mind them being in base game. Again, for The Sims 3, they were a paid for item on the Sims 3 store, so you can plan outfits there for the whole family, or you can choose to change someone's nappy on there. Base game actually has the thing now where nappies will spawn on the floor after you've changed a baby or a toddler, and they also have bottles spawning on the floor, kind of like a throwback to The Sims 2. So things do get very, very messy, especially if you have a messy eater, because then piles of food will also start to pile up. So you can can actually get a baby changing table with a bin if you're not a fan of cleaning up. You can't actually bathe a baby on there though, a little bit different from The Sims 3, but you can bathe infants and toddlers in the bath as usual. Science babies. I know these are coming with the base game update, so if you're watching this video, you've probably already discovered science babies for yourself, but I did play around with them in my early access, so I kind of wanted to talk about them here. To summarize, you go about having a science baby by clicking on your phone and choosing to have a science baby. You can have a science baby as a single sim, or you can choose to have a science baby with another sim. This sim can either be your romantic partner, be it boyfriend, girlfriend, partner. If you choose this option, both of those sims will be the parents. It will be like the traditional style of having a baby when it comes to mixing those parents' genetics, and also appear on the family tree. However, if you choose to have a science baby with just a friend, that's where things get a little bit complicated, and also where I wish we could switch things up, because I had my sim Heather actually have a science baby with Christopher Michelson. They went to the hospital, she came back with a baby. This happens instantly, by the way. They don't go through pregnancy. I'll talk about why I think that is later. However, when you actually go into the family tree, that baby's parents are both nominated as Heather, the one who wanted a science baby, and then also Christopher, the man she asked to have a science baby with. This isn't restricted by gender. You can ask literally anyone as long as you have a pretty good relationship with them. So those two were both the parents, and then both of their partners, because obviously both of them were married, were actually stepmothers of Hank. Yes, my baby is called Hank. What about it? And then Hank's siblings, because 3 of them were from my Sims that I was playing, were their half siblings, and then the 2 on the Michelson side were also half siblings. I kind of wish that you could choose to elect who you have as the parent. I kind of wish that I could uncheck Christopher as the father and just have my other Sim as the other mother. I just think that that would be more accurate to like the stories that people want to tell, because not everyone who is a surrogate like wants to be known as a parent. There is adoption, which I don't know if that comes with base game or if that comes with the expansion pack, but you can click on a child if they aren't like genetically related to your sim. You can choose to adopt them. It's really cute. They like read a certificate and they'll actually get added as your child. So it will say like daughter or son, and they will be like your full child in your family tree. Unfortunately, you don't have that option with a science baby. So even if my sim wanted to adopt this baby, she couldn't. She could only adopt it as a care dependent. And the reason I think a sim comes home automatically with a sim is to do with the create a sim options. Not everyone who has a science baby is actually going to be checked in create a sim for being able to get pregnant. The keepsake box, not gonna lie, I fully did not touch it. I did not have any elders actually in my active household, but I'm fairly sure the way it works is you can just live drag things into it either from your inventory or live mode, and then they get stored in that box. If you actually have an elder, you can choose to entrust that to a younger sim. It's not the heirlooms that I wanted, but also it's kind of a good middle ground. I'm glad that they included it. That's kind of the only thing that's like super specific to elders. And like I said, there's not really anything specific to teenagers other than the treehouse being a hangout. As I said at the beginning of this video, this isn't my full-blown review. I basically just wanted to talk about what came in this pack, telling you how to do certain things, because I personally found some of them confusing when I was playing through for the first time. However, I do think I'm going to try and have a can we replay, which is usually my form of a review, up on Friday. I know it's after the pack comes out, but I felt like this was a good overview to give you an insight on like whether you're interested in purchasing this. And then obviously the final decision may be made by the weekend, because I honestly need to sit and think on this. Just from my first forming opinions, I really enjoyed playing. I really enjoyed exploring and seeing different outcomes. I really like that this pack has certain consequences, which feels like something I have been begging for in The Sims 4 for so long, and they're actually really enjoyable. Yes, there's a lot of pop-ups. I don't think that's going to be for everyone. I do think that this is going to be a lurker pack for most people, but because I am a storyteller when it comes to The Sims, and I enjoy giving my Sims personality, having that represented in the gameplay, and then also working on relationships and difficulties that family life and also friendship might create, it was kind of a no no-brainer that I was gonna enjoy my time with this pack. Obviously, I do feel like some things could get repetitive. This was my first time playing. I played about 2 weeks in game, and I already started to see a few repeats of the toddler and infant quirks. But again, they did add to the Sims personality, which I also enjoyed, and I do still think you can make them different, even if some of them do share 1 or 2 of the same quirks. Family dynamics, I really wish those were more dynamic. Maybe they are, I just didn't get to see it, but I doubt it. I feel they could get quite tired considering there's only 7 of them, and if they don't shift, you're kind of left with stuff that you'll probably never either really discover, or you'll over discover it and be like, okay, I'm bored of this now. I do wish that Sims could randomly remember milestones. I think it would have been really cool if maybe my infant had aged up into a toddler then a child, and then as a child, if there was a fire again, they could remember and get sad. I also obviously think that kids' confidence is honestly kind of useless to me. My biggest letdowns though were obviously the power walking and the recreation center. The recreation center, I think, more than the power walking. I'm kind of used to things being limited to worlds. Yeah, annoying if you wanted to have your elders in Willow Creek. I mean, to be fair, the world looks kind of like Willow Creek, so you could just say they were meeting up with a friend down the road and it wouldn't be that far from the truth. But I kind of wish that they had used jogging paths for it instead of just limiting it to around that one lake. The rec center was just underutilized. I feel as if they could have completely scrapped that from this pack and it wouldn't have been missing because they could have just used the library instead. I understand it if it is from the programming side that I talked about. And then there were certain glitches. This is an early access. I know a lot of people have reported back to the team and the team are aware of certain things. But the biggest glitches, honestly, that I recognize were kind of trivial. They were just like animational glitches. For example, the practicing to ride the bike was super glitchy. And then also some of the infant stuff, sometimes the carrier would disappear like you saw in the fire shot and the baby would just kind of be hovering. They also randomly got attached to feet at certain points, so it just looked like you were kicking your baby around. And then also, I do think that infants are too overpowered when it comes to Sims autonomy. Basically, your Sims will be checking on their infants constantly. You've probably seen this in base game if you've got the infant update. Please let me know how you feel about it though. From what you've seen here, what you're really excited for, what you slightly disappointed about, I want to hear all of your thoughts. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I know this was a long video, but I like to go as in depth as possible for those who want it, and then you could skip over certain things if you don't want to. And oh my word, I've been working on this video since I got early access pretty much. Get me out of here.